When you were a child, where did you hear about World War II? For me, it was not always in a classroom during a lecture. It was everywhere, in the books I read and the movies I watched. Some of my favorite books and movies were tainted by this war. In some, though I may not have realized it at the time, this was a central theme. Reading about these things in children's books and watching them in movies really brought this war to life for me. World War II shaped a lot of the world thoughts and opinions, and this is reflected in our literature. The Chronicles of Narnia introduced me to the idea of war through the use of allusion to the London bombings. I never really gave it much thought back then, but the reason that the four Pevensey children had to leave their home, incidentally London, is because of the London bombings of World War II. During this time, many people sent out their children to live with relatives in the countryside, and many strangers opened up their homes to these refugees. How horrible it must have been to leave their homes and families to live in a stranger's home, always listening to the radio, hoping that it was not their mother's home that was hit today. My favorite classic movie, The Sound of Music, gave me a closer look at the takeover of Austria, called the Anschluss. This is one of the first moves Germany made under the influence of the Nazis when they started taking control of other countries. I saw the political strife that was occurring in Austria at the time, as well as the almost calm transfer of power. It interested me to see the individual reactions of each of the characters to the Anschluss. Later I would be introduced to the movie Pearl Harbor, which showed me the destruction wrought by the Japanese and the complete surprise with which it was received. Through the eyes of a nurse, I saw the sheer number of dead and wounded people, as well as the desperation and fear that everyone had, knowing that they could not save everyone. This was the first movie that showed me the true horrors of the war. It also allowed me to see the reaction of the American people, the politics surrounding the start of our involvement in the war, and the President's proclamation of war. In middle school, I became acquainted with the story of Anne Frank, and through her, the Holocaust. In class, we read her book, and as a child around her age, I felt her fear and her frustration with the situation. I also learned that she was lucky to be alive for so long. From stories like her, I saw what happened to so many innocent people in the occupied territories while the rest of the world fought to reach them. Before I had read Anne Frank's story, I had only really thought of the war itself without understanding the cause. Now I knew why so many people were willing to give up their lives fighting against the Nazis. I always wonder how anybody could choose to deny that this tragedy occurred. It is so influential that it shaped the thoughts of the world. It is not a thing of the past only written about in history books. It is alive in our literature. If you ever pick up a book written within 20 years of this war, chances are these elements created by World War II are present in plot and in theme. We can never forget the messages our writers and directors are sending us.